Beautiful. So, good afternoon, everyone. Today is Friday, October 1st, 2021. This is our first perinatal lunch and learn of the season, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone. We are going to begin today's lunch and learn with a quote. I'm going to make a few announcements, and then you're going to see we're going to do today's workshop with a unique style. I'm going to be interviewing today Dr. Mary Bell Carlson, and I'll tell you a little bit about Mary in just a moment. Some of you may know I've been really hot and heavy on Amanda Gorman's The Hill We Climb because I just got the book at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, where I visited my niece who started Emmanuel College. So I've been gathering some inspiration from Amanda Gorman. And she says, when day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new day blooms as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And when I read this piece this morning, Mary, I immediately thought of you because you're brave, you're bold, and you're living it. And I love that you have dedicated your practice in financial planning and financial therapy to perinatal and families, but definitely with an emphasis of early childhood families. So it's beautiful. I want to also, you're welcome. I want to share with you all that coming up on October 20th, and you're going to see an email from me on Sunday. I'm going to send out our flyer. On October 20th from 7 to 9 p.m., we have a Zoom workshop supporting perinatal providers of color. Perinatal providers of color are invited to gather to learn more about PSI Connecticut, and discuss issues emerging in their practices working with families of color during the perinatal period. This is going to be a time, this workshop will be led by Nicole Archer, LPC, and Danielle Camblard Spearman, PsyD, who are two clinicians of color who are on our Resources and Professional Development Committee. It's going to be a time to share resources, reflect, network, and it's open to any provider. Okay, it doesn't have to be only clinical providers. And I also want to make sure everyone is saving the date for Monday, December 6th for the annual open board meeting. It will be via Zoom, 7 to 9 p.m. and you can observe the business of the board of directors and receive committee updates as well. And we usually do a summary of activities for the year through the committee. So please, please, please join us for that. PSI Connecticut is growing, and we have a greater reach, and we want to make sure that people feel connected with the work that we're doing. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Carlson. Mary Bell Carlson lives in Virginia, guys, okay? She's not here in Connecticut. She's in Virginia, so we have our first national speaker. She's a financial behavior expert, and she's worked in both military and government communities for over a decade. Dr. Carlson is a well-known speaker, podcaster. I've checked out your podcast. You are so great. Podcaster and author whose talents and acumen have helped hundreds of families improve their personal finances and inspired other professionals to improve their communication skills. After getting married and having children, she started Chief Financial Mom. I love this. I love your website. I'm going to put it in the chat in a little bit. It's a personal finance education platform to help busy moms. She also teaches in the financial planning programs at the University of Georgia and Texas Tech, and serves on the board of directors of George Mason University's Financial Planning and Wealth Management program. She is the co-host of Real Money, Real Experts, a podcast covering real stories about how financial counselors and coaches impact their clients and can grow their business. Mary, you earned your PhD from Kansas State University in financial planning with an emphasis in financial therapy. And I can't wait for you to define this for us. Your master's degree is also in financial planning from Texas Tech University, an undergrad in political science. I love this. Yeah, you definitely love that Amanda Gorman quote, I'm sure, from Brigham Young University. Dr. Carlson is a certified financial planner, accredited financial counselor. And as I said, she lives in Virginia. She is married to an avid hiker, and she has 3 children. So I want to start today's Perinatal Lunch and Learn, Mary, by asking you what moved you to dedicate your practice to focusing on moms and families?
Great question. And it's not going to be a short answer. I'll give you kind of a history of, I started out very middle class, right? My father worked in the oil field. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a pre-K special ed teacher. And I just remember growing up that my dad was the one who handled the money and my mom was the one that spent it. And I remember with that though, I remember over time seeing my dad was the guy who would bring his big checkbook to the bank and hand it to him and be like, you're 10 cents off. Like he would argue with the bank that they were wrong, right? And my mom was the one like, I still have, how am I overdrawn? I still have checks. What's going on, right? Like it was the quintessential. And so I remember growing up with this and just kind of seeing this juxtaposition. And I really enjoyed money. I liked learning about this. And it was something that I remember it, I started as a bank teller in high school. In fact, I quit. This is what a nerd I am. I quit the high school basketball team to work like a part-time. So I went to school in the morning and part-time worked at the bank in the afternoon because I loved it so much. Total nerd out right there. But yeah, I remember sitting at the bank one day and being like, I really like helping people and I like working with money. And so I had no idea that what financial planning was or financial therapy or anything else. And I just thought, well, I'm going to go to school and get into finance because of course that's people and money, which it's not at all. It's about making companies a lot richer. And so long story short, I went to school, ended up falling in. I started at BYU, and that's political science ended up being the quickest thing I could graduate in because I had found at Texas Tech this thing called financial planning. And it was this perfect marriage of people and money. And it taught you all of the things that you needed to know throughout life: taxes, retirement, insurance, investments, all this stuff that you have to deal with, but no one ever teaches you about, right? And I remember asking my dad one time, Dad, how did you learn? How did you learn all this stuff? Here I am getting a master's degree in it, but how did you learn? And he looked at me and said, honey, it's called the School of Hard Knocks. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go to that school. That's not the same place I want to be. And so I went on and got my degree, but after I was done, I wasn't satisfied. And I don't mean this derogatory, but I wasn't satisfied being just a financial planner because that would help a few people, but I wanted to impact much bigger and broader. And so I remember I got a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C., keeping in mind, I love politics. I had already spent a semester on the Hill as an intern on Capitol Hill, working for a congressman. And I just kind of had that political bug in me. And I thought, everyone needs to know this. It's not taught in schools. It's not taught other places. So let me go change legislation. This is probably how naive I was at the age of 25. And so I jumped on the airplane and went there and thought, how can you not do this? Long story short, I ended up not working on the Hill again, but I did work as a lobbyist for the first 2.5 years after my master's degree. And it really helped me see how much impact legislation can have on individual lives, and kind of put me in the players. I remember being in the Treasury room. So the Department of Treasury started a financial literacy and economic commission. And we were in the gold room of the Treasury. And there really is a gold room, and it is absolutely stunning. And here we have all of the big players in the government, everyone from OPM to DOD to you name the 3-letter acronym, and they're there. We would have the Treasury secretaries come in and speak to us. So I was just kind of overwhelmed by this huge group, and yet it wasn't happening on the ground. So that was kind of where I came from. I spent a couple of years in the Pentagon. They had hired me as an expert in financial planning, but I had no clue about the military. But I really enjoyed my 2.5 years there. And I remember asking my Navy boss one time, "Hey, Dave," he was a Navy commander. And I said to him, "Is the military like 50% enlisted, 50% officer?" And he just laughed at me and said, "Mary, we got to get you out of the Pentagon because it is such a skewed thing of what it really is." So I did. I left the Pentagon. I went to Kansas State, and I worked for there's a military installation there. It's called Fort Riley, and it's a Army base, and it's got a infantry. So keep in mind, this is like 2010. So they had been deploying for almost a decade at this point, and families were and they would go 18 months to 2 years at a time where they would not see their spouse. And so there was a lot